Test What Teachers Tea Room. Here, you will learn useful tips on how to teach with Test What textbook to achieve the learning objectives in the curriculum. Join us for today's session on JSS 3 Standard English Book Review.
For the past days, we've been looking at English language in the primary section. We started with the nursery section, we went to the primary, now we're in the secondary section. We'll be looking at JSS 3 English. Now, before we do that, we all know that JS3 is more or less the terminal class for students in junior secondary school. And handling them is very, very crucial, to get the best from them at the end of the day when they'll be writing their external exams. So we'll be looking at Standard English Book 3. Standard English Book 3, we have our workbook here. We have the textbook. We also have the practice test book here with me. All right, I will start with, like I said yesterday, the textbook has been structured in a way that for the teachers, they have their learning objectives at the end of the class or at the end of the day, or before preparing any notes before going to the class, you have your learning objectives. So they really made the teacher's work easier for her. Now, of course, it also captures all the aspects of English language, ranging from reading, vocabulary development, writing, grammar, presentation skill, which is very new for some English textbooks, then literature, phonics, and spelling. So I'll start with the reading session. Now, the book captures the different types of reading, which are very didactic. For example, reading for speed. I would like to read them out here. Excuse me, okay. Reading for speed. We have to test the students' speed when reading. So under reading for speed, we have techniques of reading or rapid reading. Sometimes you give a student a comprehension passage to solve the questions under probably, let's say, 5 or 10 minutes. So, but the child may not really know how to go about that. So this book has really done justice on method of rapid reading. And some of the features mentioned here are: 1, scanning, skimming, picture reading, note taking, memorizing. Now, there is something I found very interesting about this book, especially when it comes to note taking. For schools that want to register students for checkpoint and IHSS, note taking is actually an exercise, a part of their question. But in WAEC questions for like junior WAEC or senior WAEC, they don't really have any session that asks students to take down notes. But if you're preparing students for checkpoint or IHSS, there is an exercise that has to do with note taking. And that is one of the beautiful things that this book has done, teaching students on how to take notes when they are reading a comprehension passage. Then also we have reading for critical evaluation. Under reading for critical evaluation, we have, what is critical reading? What is the essence of critical reading? We have what is a fact and some examples, how to identify facts, how to identify opinions. Then, of course, you went further to talk about induction and deduction reading. When you say this word in a classroom, the student might be confused. What is deduction and induction reading? That is making inference from a passage you've read. So this book has really done justice to that. Then we also have reading for summary. Under reading for summary, we have what is an idea, what is a paragraph, what is a summary. Now, what this book has done is to teach students how to summarize after reading a comprehension passage. And what did it do? It looked at how to identify key points, how to identify main ideas from a passage, and then use those key points to form a summary, answers to summary questions. Then we also have reading for information. Under reading for information, we have, okay, what is the family? How is the family the most important unit of the society? Revision of how to identify facts and opinion. So when you give a student a passage on reading for information, it has taught them how to source, how to look out for, keywords in the passage that are very vital to the passage or to the questions under the passage. Okay, I'll be looking at the grammar aspects. No, before that, I'll be looking at vocabulary development. This section is linked with the passages. That is, the words are generated from the comprehension passages. It's not like there's some textbook that they will treat vocabulary development differently. But this one did a very fantastic job there, in the sense that, let's say the passage is about family. So the words that will be generated from the passage will be about family. So the student have read the passage about family, have maybe come across new words, and will look out for the meaning of those new words from the dictionary. Then the child will now be given words to make use of those words in contextual meaning. And what does it do? It helps the student to build their lexicon. That is what it does. At least it prepares them for when they get to senior class, because in WAEC there is an aspect of the WAEC question that has to do with vocabulary development. Okay, so we move on to writing. Now here the workbook comes in handy, because what I discovered on writing section, they were referred to the workbook. So that means you can you just have to make do with the workbook. You can't just keep it aside like some textbooks that students hardly go to the workbook except when the teachers ask them to get the workbook to class. But this one is structured in a way that as the teacher is bringing the textbook to the class, she is also bringing the workbook. So the student must come to the class with the textbook and the workbook. Now, the workbook captures the various forms of continuous writing, ranging from essays and letters. It also captures summary writing. The continuous writing are well explained, and students are guided on how to write them. Loads of exercises on continuous writing are there to help the students improve on their writing skill. It also captures topics like question tag. Like yesterday I said, I never knew that there are certain topics that could be treated under writing. So when I looked at my checkpoint textbook, I discovered that there are certain topics that we group them under grammar, but the topics are grouped under writing. So when I looked at the exam question, and I saw that that was exactly how it was set, and this book has done justice to that. So when you're teaching your students writing, especially you're preparing them for checkpoint exam or IGCSE exam, it is a good one for you to use. Then, okay, we have topics like direct and indirect speech. Let me mention some of the topics that we have there. Okay, we have under writing. Okay, what is the composition? Features of good composition. Now, before I go further, one thing I want you to understand is that this book is more or less a revision of what has been taught in JS 1 and JS 2. So they just did a recap of what have been taught to the students, and then gave them more exercises to help them prepare for their NACO and Becker exam. So under writing, I have types of compositions, and of course samples. We have narrative, descriptive, expository, argumentative. Then we also have, there are so many here. Okay, question tag like I mentioned before. Direct and indirect speech. We also have identifying topic, sentence, and key ideas. Like I said earlier, when you're teaching the students how to write a summary or answer summary questions, what you teach them is how to identify topic, sentences, and key ideas in a comprehension passage. That way, you've guided them on how to attempt questions on summary. Now, for presentation skills. Now, when I was going through this textbook, I was wondering, the previous, the JS 1 and JS 2 presented it as communication skill, but here it is presented as presentation skills. We have topics like letter writing. You'll be wondering why it is not grouped under writing. But under presentation skills, we have letter writing, types of letter writing. article writing, speech on value, conflict resolution. I wrote here that the good thing about having or adding presentation skill to this book is that, one, to bring to fore the knowledge of contemporary issues, just like you have them in subjects like civic education and social studies. Number two, to elicit critical thinking on the part of the students. So they read this passage, they think, because the questions elicit them to think, make inferences, from the passages. So it also helps to improve their deductive and inductive reasoning. Then it also helps them to communicate effectively through writing and speech making. So kudos to TestWorks publishers for including this in their English textbook. Then for literature, under literature we have topics like, literature covers all the genres of literature, the poetry and drama, and it didn't just stop that. It brought out extracts from certain, genres of literature which the student will read. Then there's one thing I love about the textbook again. There are dramas, playlets, let me use the word. There are certain playlets that children are asked to dramatize in class. I don't think the one I'm using in school presently now has something like that. The only thing we do is that we could read a literature textbook, an isolated literature textbook, then we ask our students to read and practice that. But this one has captured that. It's a whole lot, having literature materials included in English textbook. Then for phonics, it also captured all the sounds, especially those difficult ones. The theta sound, the schwa sound, then of course diphthongs. Some of these diphthongs that are very difficult to pronounce, it captured them. Then how they are produced and use of examples for phonics. Then again, the strength of this textbook, sir, I discovered that it has what we call question bank for teachers that are preparing students for exam. You don't really need to start racking your brain on where to get questions. So you can actually go to the textbook, source for material for your mock examination. And just like I mentioned yesterday, the book is very handy. Like one of our doctors said yesterday, is student friendly and teachers friendly. So even if the teacher is not there to take the student through, the student will be able to read, understand, and take attempt exercises. And another thing again, the practice textbook. I discovered that the practice textbook, there are certain topics that are not in the main textbook that are there. So it means if there are areas as a teacher that you are not able to cover, you can see them in the practice textbook. So it's also recommended not just for the student, but for the teachers. Then of course, it is compliance with NERDC and Becker, and also the British curriculum scheme of work. Thank you very much.
I will be discussing majorly on implementation. All these things, even as a teacher, if you cannot read rapidly, how do you teach students how to read rapidly? Let me give example. During my PhD program, I brought about 100 pages write-up for my supervisor. And within 20 to 30 minutes, he has passed so many comments. I was forced to ask him that, sir, I didn't see this. Then how come 100 pages? Within the space of, he told me that when you get there, you will know how to read that way. And when I got there, truly, within very short of period of time, I can read between lines, and that is training on rapid reading. Also, presentation. Today, this was brought to my office, and what killed the person was present. He had a very good case, but he presented it in a bad manner. Now, he was in the tight corner. The reason he came, I told him, you have a very good case, but your presentation put you in a tight corner. Then that means that right from school, we need to teach our students how to present idea. And I think that is the focal point, one of the focal points in the English that we have been told today. All in all, kudos to text word publisher for giving us standard English. Like my Oga here said, it is an update of what we are familiar with. Thank you.
To be sincere, it is people like us who are in tertiary university that knows the value of these books more. You know why? Because when you see students want to present and defend their projects, you will see, because you can't even read 80% of what you have there. Being able to discuss the focal idea is critical. And I'm so surprised that from GS3, students are being taught this. These are things that people grow up, they become PhD students, and they are looking for how to do it. And you hear, and you have the idea, but you don't know how to communicate it. But you see here, you will even see the step-by-step, what do you call that thing? Step-by-step way of going about it. It is beautiful. It is beautiful. And Dr. Ndukwe and her team will still have to take a bow later on. Yeah. They'll take a bow. Okay, so okay.
Thank you, Nkuruka. That was a nice presentation. There is an aspect that actually before now we mentioned it. Today I want us to briefly say something about it. These TextWorth textbooks, I have seen about 4 different peculiarities that if you use it as a teacher, in fact, it makes your job very, very easy. Let us take, for example, adaptability to all teaching methods. When you talk about chains of teaching methods that we have, those that we are familiar with, those that we say, oh, these are modern methodologies. It is easy for any teacher to make do with the textbook. For example, we talk of flipped classroom teaching method. Flipped classroom is like when you flip something. From classroom, you turn it to home. From formal, you have informal. It goes on to tell us that a textbook like this, students will learn and gain something from home. And they will come back to school either to continue the task or they start afresh. So it can be used regularly and conveniently. Again, setting question is another part of it. It's amazing about this book. You have a lot of questions there, and I've read through those questions. They follow a particular pattern. We talk of a Bloom taxonomy of setting question, level by level. By the time you become an item writer, probably with the state government or with British Council, you know that they want all of these components to be present in any question. If you set 40 questions, even the theory, where you have 16 questions, you have 20 questions, you must set in a way that we cover all the 6 levels. When you talk about knowledge, you ask what? You want them to be precise. You want them to list. Then comprehension. This comprehension has to do with understanding. There are some verbs we use. anytime you want to ask such question. I'm imploring all teachers to try as much as possible to see that asking question matter anytime. If you have the content to teach, and you are able to ask question in the right way, all the students will fall in line, and they will do better in their final exam. Because the final exam we are talking about follow the pattern, and this textbook follows the pattern. So in classroom, when you are teaching, as much as possible, try to follow this pattern. One will be wondering, is it physical education class or physical education paper? No. The psychomotor they want us to set question on, it is clear. We have cognitive, we have affective, we have psychomotor. All of them are to be present in the question so set at any time. You'll be setting questions sometimes for 2 weeks. If you are going through, you have been told that you are setting 60 objective questions. The knowledge part of it should be 10. The application should be 8. Synthesis should be 8. Analysis should be 8. Evaluation should be 10. Until you are able to rack your brain, you are able to think deep before you'll be able to come up with all those questions. And if you are familiar with Textworth textbooks, it means you are blessed. So I am encouraging all teachers out there to try as much as possible to follow this pattern anytime they want to set a question. Again, there are features in this textbook that when you are, because as a director of studies in any school, all the HODs will submit a request to you. They will recommend textbook. I can bet it. If you want to present your budget as HOD or as a social studies teacher, English or any subject, you want to present it, they want to be very sure that you have read the book. And the book will serve the purpose. I can tell you, all we have reviewed here in the past few days, I can tell you, you will always win your argument. Because all the textbooks contain all it takes to win the argument with the management of any school. Thank you.
If you have enjoyed the session, kindly subscribe to our YouTube channel at Teachers Tea Room. Thanks for watching.